Hi Year 12, welcome to the lesson on how to apply this essay plan to an extract question. So in the previous video, I kind of rattled through this at breakneck speed to the extent that I'm genuinely out of breath trying to get this into a 15-minute video. These are the four things that I'd suggested that you focus on when you analyse the extract. So where's it come in the structure of the play? What kind of terminology can you chuck at it in terms of where we're at? Paragraph 2, how do you see like the elements of a tragic hero in this scene? Paragraph 3, how do you see that component of inevitability? Is there any kind of hope at this point, or are we on that kind of downfall towards doom at the end? What foreshadowing can we see? And then finally, paragraph 4, audience reaction. How are we feeling? Why are we feeling that? What is it teaching us? And how is it teaching us it? So I'm going to take those kind of four issues one by one and show you what I would say about this extract so that I've got a kind of overall argument and an overall introduction by the end of this lesson. So this is the extract you were given from 4.1. It says, explore the significance of this extract in relation to the tragedy of the play as a whole. Remember to include in your answer relevant analysis of Shakespeare's dramatic methods, that AO2 stuff that we need to work on. So I'm just going to give you a moment to pause the video, have a quick reread of this section, and have a think about those four things. Okay, so if we're talking about structure, where the scene comes, where Othello is on his term in terms of his tragic journey, these are the three things that I think are going to be the most useful terms. So I'm going to talk about the climax, even though I know this is not the climax, but because it comes immediately after. So I'm going to situate this in terms of where it comes in the play, what's come before, what comes after. So it comes immediately after that climax. I'm going to talk about how it's located in the Lusus phase, the falling action, where he's in his downfall and it's all inevitable. I'm going to talk about peripeteia, that reversal of fortune, and how his status has now changed. He's starting to kind of lose his reputation. So, having a look at the bits that I've highlighted then, in terms of how we see that Othello was in his downfall phase, the first thing that I've highlighted is striking her and calling her a devil. Now here I'll be talking about reversal, okay? So I'll be talking about he's using his actions now. So before we're talking about how he was a kind of man of eloquence, and here he's reduced to one word, one utterance, exclamations, which show he's a little bit out of control. He's very emotional, and obviously a very kind of violent stereotype. So I'll be doing big contrasts here with Othello now compared to Othello earlier in the play. And the kind of key quote that I will be thinking about here probably is that idea of the green-eyed monster. How has he become monstrous now? How has he fallen from that high status place from where we first met? And I think part of that is the second quote in red, this would not be believed in Venice. So this idea that he's been geographically displaced, but also in terms of his status, his reputation, his mental kind of capacities, he's been displaced. His trust of Desdemona has been displaced, and her role in his life as our captain's captain, her kind of leadership role over him has been usurped by the villain Iago. So this would not be believed in Venice, a place of reason, a place of justice. This is only, kind of found in the warlike Isle of Cyprus. The next thing I've highlighted is, oh, devil, devil. And the reason that I've highlighted that is because I think it really exemplifies his loss of eloquence. Okay, so I'll be thinking about how I could use that, that repetition, that technique here to prove that he's kind of lost his power of words. And then I'll be talking about the fact that he commands Desdemona in this scene. So he says, out of my sight. And I'll be thinking about that quote, my captain's captain, and how really she was kind of the boss of him. And they were kind of equals, and he wanted her to come with him to Cyprus. And he saw her as an equal earlier, and now he sees her as somebody that he can command. Now he sees her as a soldier. He speaks only as a soldier, not as a lover, whereas before it was his stories, remember, his words that made Desdemona fall in love with him. Mistress I thought was important here because it shows the kind of control that Iago has over him. He's talking like Iago in this scene, isn't he? So if you think of how Iago talks to Emilia and how he thinks about women, words like mistress and devil are words that I would associate with Iago. I think this scene really shows that Iago has really transplanted Desdemona. That's why I'll be talking about the climax, because this comes after the marriage scene. He's replaced Desdemona in Othello's kind of mentality. And I think another part that proves just how insidious Iago's hold over Othello is in this scene is that word turn. So we talked about Othello being a metafictive character and how he plays his role on the stage, and he has these soliloquies that show that he knows he's playing a role to the audience. And he uses that word turn, doesn't he, in Act 1? I follow him to serve my turn upon him. And here is Othello repeating that word turn, but accusing Desdemona of playing a role. So I would make her turn. Sir, she can turn and yet go on and turn again. So again, that repetition important, but I'd also be thinking about how turn kind of flows through those lines there. It's at the end of one line, it's twice in the middle of one line, then it's at the beginning of one line. It's something that you can't quite get away from. It's about his kind of turmoil here. I am commanded home. So this idea that he's just been reduced to that soldier, he doesn't make decisions for himself anymore. Really important here because he's not making his decisions, Iago is. And that's linked into the fact that Iago only really gets one line in this scene. Right at the end, he is much changed. So a big part of like Othello's downfall here is that Iago no longer has to pull the strings. Yeah, Othello's doing it by himself. He's the one who kind of bossing people around here out of my sight. Iago doesn't have to do anything; just has to sit back and let him broom everything for himself. And this is why we see Othello has kind of released that idea of being the respectable figure in public because he's too bothered about his domestic personal disputes. So when he says Cassio shall have my place, we know that that often means both kind of in a military way, but also his kind of domestic place. So he's talking about how he's going to surrender that to Cassio. He's going to surrender his public role to Cassio because he's unwilling to allow Cassio to have that private role as Desdemona. So, how do I know that Othello is a traditional tragic hero in this extract? The key things I'm looking for are a fatal flaw, I'm looking for hubris, I'm wondering, has he got any megalopsyche about him at this point? And what's his status like? So the things that I'll be thinking about is this kind of motif of vision. So we've talked about this a lot in the play. And Lodovico says, this would not be believed in Venice, though I should swear I saw it. And then later on, Othello says, get out of my sight. And this idea that he can't see anymore, he's been blinded by Iago, part of his downfall, isn't it? Part of his kind of fatal flaw, that he's so jealous of Desdemona that he can't see things clearly anymore. So I'd be using that motif of vision. I'd also be using that semantic field of animals. So we've got crocodile, and then across with this arrow, we've got goats and monkeys. And I'll be talking about how Othello's being kind of reduced here to his kind of most bestial form. He's become what Iago has always said that he is. He's become that kind of racial stereotype of a wild savage. And he's trying to kind of point the finger and accuse Desdemona of that. So real irony there for the audience, and we feel real pity for Desdemona that it's so unfair. So I'll be talking about the kind of animal imagery here and how that kind of reflects the fact that he's fallen from this respectable man with status to now being quite a bestial person. What else would I talk about? I would talk about how Lodovico isn't blind. He can see that Desdemona is truly an obedient lady. So the contrast between Lodovico and Othello. And then Othello says, what would you with her, sir? And he just objectifies and he's like, oh, do what you want with her. What do you want her to do? I'll make her perform and monkey here. And then when he says, oh, well-painted passion, I'd be really zooming in on the exclamation elements of that. So the oh, the exclamation mark, and how he's the one actually who's behaving with the passion. How ironic. I'll be talking about how the alliteration, the plosives there, make him sound very angry, very out of control. And he's really annoyed that Desdemona seems to be putting on this good turn. She seems to be putting on a really good performance, or well-painted passion. And yet actually it's him who's changed. It's him who has these kind of uncontrollable passions. And then I've just drawn this kind of line across, because what Lodovico is saying here is look how far he's fallen. Yeah, look how far he's gone from megalopsyche in terms of status as a respectable man from the noble Moor whom passion could not shake, and then all that kind of animal imagery and all those kind of explosive sounds coming out of him, a real kind of warlike man in this scene. So that's what I'll be talking about in terms of the tragic hero. Inevitability then, how does it foreshadow the end? Well, mostly because this is the first time he becomes violent towards Desdemona. So I'd be using those stage directions of striking her. I'd also have Desdemona's kind of blind obedience in the face of that violence. So she says, I've not deserved this. I will not stay to offend you. So we know she's not going to put up a fight when he tries to kill her later on. We know that she's doomed. So in terms of inevitability, most of it is around the fact that she's not going to fight back. Yeah, we feel that it's inevitable that she's doomed, that she's going to die because he's unreachable and she won't try and reach out. Okay, so I've not deserved this. I'm not going to stay to offend you. And the fact that he hits her. I would also talk about the fact that, as Iago says, he is much changed. He's unreachable. This is the point of no return. Like, we're past the climax now. We can't do anything about it. That end is set in stone. It's faded now. So when he says, "Get you away, I obey the mandate," the idea that he could kind of boss Desdemona around, that he sees her now as somebody kind of lesser than him. She's not the captain's captain anymore. She's somebody that he knows that he kind of deserves service from and feels that he's not getting it and she's going to pay. I obey the mandate. Really, the irony of that there is that he's obeying Iago in this scene, isn't he? So I'll be talking about Barbara Everett and that inversion of the master-servant dynamic and how this is the point where everything has changed because Iago has become the strong one. Iago has that hold over him now. Okay, final thing then, audience reaction. What are we learning? How is he teaching us it? How is he creating pity and fear? So most of this kind of pity, of course, is for Desdemona in this scene, isn't it? So just calling him sweet Othello. She hasn't changed her language in the way she speaks to him. Of course, we feel sorry when she gets hit and she says, "I've not deserved this." But also, I think the big thing in this scene, in terms of our pity and our reaction, is that Lodovico is kind of voicing our reaction. He's leading our emotional response and he's voicing our thoughts. So he says later on in the extract, "Is this the noble Moor?" That kind of disbelief. We can't believe it either. When he says, "Make her amends, she weeps," or "I do beseech your lordship, call her back," he's basically saying what we're all thinking. He's saying, "Oh, don't, Othello, don't treat her like that. She doesn't deserve it." And he's basically voicing all of those kind of frustrations that the audience are feeling. So I'll be really talking about Lodovico almost as the kind of audience mouthpiece and how important it is that he is a kind of a representation of Venice and reason. What else would I say here? Iago, he is much changed. The idea of fear, we know that there's no way back now. We're really quite scared of Othello. We're scared because he's hitting Desdemona. We're scared because he's been reduced to that kind of animalistic control or lack of control that Iago seems to have over him. So these are the four things that I've thought about. And I'm thinking about what are the common things that I can draw from these four issues. So in terms of structure, it's the beginning of downfall, it's past the point of no return when Othello's public reputation is usurped by his private conflict. He doesn't care about his public standing because he just wants revenge. He's completely under Iago's spell, Desdemona is doomed. In terms of how I know he's a tragic hero, big contrast from his elegant high status beginning. He sacrificed his allegiance with Venice as a place of justice. Now he's become that green-eyed monster more befitting the warlike Isle of Cyprus. He's become the racial stereotype of the savage that Iago has fueled throughout the play. So this is the point where there's no going back to kind of humanity and nobility. In terms of inevitability, it mostly stems from the fact that Iago's got control now. Okay, he can't get out of it. It also stems from the fact that Othello's so unreasonable here. He's not behaving with eloquence on a rational level. He's very different to Lodovico. It also stems from Desdemona's obedience. She's not going to fight back. If he's going to treat her like that, she's not going to do anything. She's going to take it. So this cements her doom as a victim of the tragic hero. And then finally, in terms of our reaction, as I've said, mostly vocalised by Lodovico, a representative of Venice and therefore reason and justice. We feel pity for Desdemona. We also kind of feel pity for Othello, I think, but you could debate that a lot, couldn't you, for AO5, whether we're angry with him or whether we kind of feel sorry for him. We fear for both of them, and we also fear Iago. And remember how scary Iago would be as a kind of devilish Janus figure to the Jacobeans. We are being taught the dangers of inverting the master-servant relationship, of internalized stereotypes of othering. I think that's my kind of big idea that I'll be saying this extract to kind of reveal the dangers of. So in terms of what I'd be drawing together then, past the point of no return because he's under this spell, so she's doomed. This idea of he's become the racial stereotype, so there's no way back. It's all inevitable because he's under Iago's control and he can't be reasoned with. And then finally, it's teaching us that if you tell somebody that they are something subhuman enough, they will eventually believe it and become it. So this is my introduction that combines these four elements. I hope that I get a chance to read it to you before this cuts off, but if not, it's there on the screen for you to see. This extract from 4.1 comes immediately after the climax of the play in 3.3, where Othello and Iago perform a mock wedding ceremony. By this point, Othello is past the point of no return. This marriage has switched his allegiance from the loyal, angelic, obedient Desdemona to the devilish villain Iago, and the hero is now willing to sacrifice his public reputation to address his private conflict. As we embark on the Lusus, Shakespeare foregrounds just how far the hero has fallen from grace. And I'm going to pause there because I've got 2 seconds left, so enjoy.